All right. Well, welcome everybody to episode 10 of Film Detectives. We made it to 10.
We
It's our
did.
first double digit. Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. We're live this time, which is also a little bit different. I'm seeing two different faces on my screen. I'm not used to seeing Elliot nor our guest today, who is an international award winning filmmaker. Kurt Kubicek, thank you so much for coming on. Round of applause.
Yes, thank you, Kurt, for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the best way to start, Kurt, is just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to in the industry and anything else you feel is, you want to give the viewers.
Yeah, like how did you get your start in cinema? A little bit about your background.
Yeah, I was born and raised kind of in the suburbs of Chicagoland area. I was an athlete most of my life, actually. And the only thing that I ultimately was I guess great at was I was in honors English academically, but I never really thought much of it. I just loved history and stories and English and read a lot, just was a big reader. And, lo and behold, I was doing the athlete thing and being young and in love. And I ended up playing like college golf and going down that direction. Yeah, dude. Yeah,
I understand.
It's the one of the best sports that's a metaphor of life. That's why I like it so much. You're all by yourself, and whether it's good or bad, it's your fault. So,
and it requires a lot of patience.
An incredible amount of intense focus.
That too.
And in like 10 seconds or less.
Right.
1/10 of a second.
Yeah. So,
there we go.
I ultimately then I took an acting class in college, and I'd always loved films. I mean, I would. When I was young, like I said, stuff I didn't really put together until now. I eventually, am in entertainment, but like realizing like, why did I go see that movie 5 times in the theater? Like, what was wrong with me? Whatever, you're 14 years old and you're into a really funny movie, but you keep going back to see this movie and you're like, oh, wow, this is because it really brought me joy. On a greater subconscious level. So anyways, I loved movies more and more and more after that acting class and understanding more about the craft of films and entertainment. So it kind of like, I ended up, long story long, I went to I became a PGA golf teacher. And so I had a nice, cool job, early to mid 20s. Parents were like, our boy's doing good, like
he can pay the bills now.
Pro. Yeah, right. He's got the place and on his way to whatever, all that whole thing, especially Midwest vibe, kind of culture, so after a year of that, which was great, I went on this trip and I traveled and I had plans to go with a buddy to go to Europe and to do that whole thing that like everybody heard about, you know what I mean? You read about, whether it was through the Kerouacs or the Hunter S. Thompsons or, different people that like I looked up to was traveling and going and seeing the world. So I literally took 80% of everything that I made in my savings and just was like, hey, and me and a buddy went to Europe, unplanned.
Wow.
We went over to Dublin and pretty nuts. I go back and read some of those emails and I was like, you're a loon bag for like 24, dude. Like just nuts. But I just wanted to like really get the most out of life and the experience of the unknown. That's one of my biggest excitements and fascinations.
And I think that really comes through in your films too, because a lot of your world experiences kind of trickle down into your the way you shoot and the way you also write as well. I've kind of noticed that also with, especially, your interests, like with 1/10 of a second, and then Come Die With Me as well. And also Un Regalo Especial has, world experience there, and also Skin in the Game was also again having that world experience and seeing the world itself and what it is, and the darkness and also the light as well.
The interesting thing for me that I'm starting to realize, and we can come back to later, is me actually like being a writer creator of now a television show that I've developed. You know what I mean? On paper in the package, is that I have been telling a lot of other people's stories, people that were writer producers, people that had helped me to come in and ultimately produce and direct and get a lot of their vision out. So, and it was funny because I remember even before 1/10 of a second, I wanted to take on co-writing a script and working with somebody and kind of a neat story. And then I even challenged myself. And I was like, okay, cool. I want to really prove it to myself that I could make it in Hollywood and do other stuff, not just be an auteur or writer, director. And, as much as I love those people, and then lo and behold, I get caught into all these projects that, are a lot of going into other people's world. I mean, even with 1/10 of a second, Johnny Rock Page, people were, like, oh, were you a big motorcycle guy? You like to go fast. And I was
that was going to be one of my questions is like, do you ride motorcycles? And did you get to ride motorcycles with Johnny?
Right. I honestly rode a bike once and it was so fast and so insane. And after seeing what the bike is capable of and seeing the best in the world ride and race, I was like, man, I'll come back to this. Maybe I'll, because at that time in my life, what a wild machine, what a rush. Yeah. And I mean, and even when I'll never forget, this is a great story. I don't know if I've ever told this, guys. It's a good one. Johnny Rock Page, when he hired me and he actually pulled the trigger, right? And he really wanted to go forth and put down to get my crew, go through the terabytes of footage, actually start putting together the story, setting up the interviews, like the first initial escrow kind of, real deal that the investors and, you know what I mean? And people put together and it was all good to go. We were out driving out in Phoenix. Johnny has this, I don't even know if it's in there. He's got this, I think it's like a 2000 now. It's probably like a 2000 and well, back then we'll get to 2012, 2013, right? Red Porsche Carrera twin turbo, just like, like beautiful car, right? Convertible. And he took me on the Phoenix freeway, right? And we went to breakfast in Scottsdale and we pull onto the highway. And I know this guy's a loon. One of the first times we had a meeting and I mean that in like, eccentricities, enigmatic.
Yeah. Quite the character.
You can't, whoa. Yeah. And a guy who's built a company, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's insanity.
The whole thing with the ATM business was like, you also, so he rides motorcycles and then just goes, I think I'll start an ATM business. It's brilliant. Genius. Yeah. And luck really too, because like it just, once the business boomed, it was like that it's set in stone. He can do whatever he wants now.
He could fund whatever he wanted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. The world and technology took care of the rest in the 90s, with ATMs. Yeah. Never forget. I know you guys know the friend in your life or the people, right, who did this to you, but this was Johnny Rock. We would get to a stoplight. He's driving around, zipping around in his Porsche. And I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe new job, a guy who actually has connections to real financing. And like I mentioned, Eric Crown, who's this big EP and very successful guy who created Insight. And, we're around these people. And so we get to a stoplight, somewhere in Scottsdale, and he just looks at it and it's a pretty semi-busy stoplight, right? But as soon as like the cross traffic was going, he just took the left, and I'm like, whoa, what do you do? Like,
where you taking?
He's like, oh, there's no one around. There's no one around. Let's go. I'm hungry.
Pulling a GTA in real life.
Yeah, you're like, what? So it starts with that. And then like I said, when we were stoked about actually going forward with the movie, he gets on the highway and it was a trip to LA for something, I would go with him, whatever. He'd be like, let's hop in the Porsche or the whatever car and let's go. And it was crazy with him because there'd be random moments, just like the one that's happening is we're on the 10 freeway and he'd pull off the exit to like go on to like, even a more main highway, I guess from the 202 to the 10. for those Phoenix people. And he just lets it rip, right? I mean, we're at 110, 130, and we're on a turn, right? Onto the highway, onto another highway. And it's just increasing speed. And he's whipping in and out of traffic. And I will never, you know what I mean?
You'll never forget that. You'll never forget that.
You're going through, you know, we're in a convertible right now. And if something, you know, we're going so fast. And the craziest part is that he was, whether it was a bike or a car, he was a race car driver. Yeah. So it was like, with the actual car and what it was capable of, he was fine.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. I was just the one going, that's a gift.
He was in the zone. Gift. Yeah, he was in the zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes through in the documentary because he seems like the type of person who's just so like cars, anything with a motor in it, it's like that's his zen. He just goes into that mode where he
has a gift of understanding it instantly. It's wild.
Yeah.
And so you guys, as storytellers and different people in the industry, when I actually like met this person and this was and got to know them and were around them enough, I was like, yeah, there's a film here. Yeah. You put this stuff together. I've got, and this guy, everything he did when he tried to put together the reality show and all this different stuff that I was around, I was like, I can make a movie out of this.
He kind of reminded me of Joe Exotic in a way. He had that same like draw to him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That exact same draw like he wanted to do. Yeah.
It's like Dale Earnhardt and Joe Exotic.
One of two people. Yeah.
He literally, I was reminded so much of Joe Exotic from Johnny, 100%, with the wanting to do the reality show and then just his lifestyle in general, and then religion playing a part at the end.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Joe had the exact same journey in a way, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're in this kind of world where you're trying to respect your right, one of your clients and the person and still tell an honest story. Mm-hmm. And it was hopefully me going, hey, for better or for worse, this is this very eccentric, wild man who was able to amass this wealth and do these things, like him or not, that, I kind of didn't want to get in too much of the way of what it was. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who had been around him or knew him or partied with him were like, you could have really,
well, and
gone
also
this way or that way. And
it's a great portrayal also, I thought, of someone who survived living with a family member who has mental illness. His mother had schizophrenia, and he was basically raised by his father and became very close with his father, which I thought was a very beautiful story, because it's like, to go through that and see his mother, kind of fall into that, and then eventually I think pass away. That had to have had a huge effect on how his life went too. And I'm sure, and of course his dad had a huge part in directing him in a certain way too.
Yeah, and absolutely. And Robert's a pretty amazing guy. His father's a pretty incredibly dynamic, intelligent guy. He was wonderful and was my physician for, 3 years. While I was around it. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Dr. Page was the real deal. Very cool guy, and very, very smart and slick and handsome. The whole deal. You could understand why Johnny that was his hero. Because he was a very cool guy, nonetheless. But and those were just different things. Yeah, like you said, he kind of got out alive. But then I guess, and the coolest story, and I think I'm quoted in the movie. I look really silly in one of the few moments that I'm in there, but he would thanks. Yeah. He would ultimately the coolest thing I learned from Johnny Rock Page that I hope people can take away from the film is so simple, which is like, he would look at me, and anytime I would kind of brainstorm or talk about why I wanted to do something, or I wasn't sure what I would do something, obviously if it wasn't monetary, you know what I mean, that I didn't, necessarily had the funds, he'd go, let's go do it.
Let's try.
What do you mean you can't do it? Let's go do it. Let's try it. Let's go, whatever. Let's go write it. Let's go shoot it. Let's go,
Well, yeah, what do you mean? That was his motto.
That's like the perfect
dream
subject.
big, anything is possible.
Yeah. So even me as, as a younger man, growing into my own essence of this whole crazy journey of getting into entertainment. And, it was just like, it was super vital. There were silly things that, I really learned that were deep lessons from a very eccentric, wild guy.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to a question I had. You mentioned, that you were very into sports growing up, and 1/10 of a second is a very, sport-esque type documentary film, and a lot of your work is very action and thriller type of stuff. So, what do you think that being in sports and your competitiveness led to you creating the type of films that you have so far on your journey, and also produced? Do you think that's had a role in it?
Absolutely. I mean, athletics were huge. Helped, like I said, it made me the producer director more than anything. More than anything. And I even played, like I said, I was a quarterback, wide receiver, running back. From probably like a 10 to 15. I played football, 9 to 15. I played football. And then basketball, I was all conference and was a point guard. And, but I got placed into more of a position where I would be, they would set picks for me to shoot threes. I had a great free throw percentage. You know what I mean? Like I was just the gym rat. I was the gym rat. Like I just recently over quarantine, I talked to one of my coaches, the assistant coach, who really helped push me actually from junior to senior year to really get starting and not be like that 3-point guy off the bench. But I was a late bloomer. Yeah. And, and it was what it was. But I remember there was a moment I was so competitive. I was like, look, I'm going to beat everybody. I'm going to beat everybody on this team in a 3-point contest and a free throw contest, and I'll beat you. And after practice one day, and we had a competition, and I beat him. Wow. And I was starting 2 games later.
And I think that shines through not only in your personality as yourself, but also in your work that I've seen. I mean, I'm good friends with you, and I found out you're an avid Bears fan, which that's somewhere we differ. Go Pack, go is all I'm going to say in that.
I know, dude. I love it. It's a good
Broncos fan here, guys. Sorry.
It's a good. You'll get there one year. One year you'll get there again. But that brought me to another question about sports. You mentioned to us before we did the podcast that you've worked with Calais Campbell and Larry Fitzgerald. Can you just talk about what it's like to work with an athlete, and what were those projects like, and how did that even come to be about in that sense?
It was really exciting, and it was just perfect timing of that. I had this movie that was getting premiered at the Phoenix Film Festival. That was its very first world premiere in 2015. And we were in conversations. One of the producers on 1/10 of a second knew Calais' brother, Jared. And Jared's awesome. He's with Yahoo Sports. He's a comedian. Jared is awesome. At the Laugh Factory, you can look up Jared Campbell. He's a talented dude on his own.
Wow, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah. Jared's great, man. So he's super, talented guy. So I met him. And then we kind of had a great couple meetings and talked about doing something. And it was a project that he wrote. And it was writer producer, like I said, who had this idea of this. And then ultimately a friend connected us, and we had a great meeting. And then they were like, oh, well, we're going to be able to get my brother. And I think Larry Fitzgerald's going to be a part of it. And we want to do a feature. And this is kind of a short based on a feature. And
that's wild.
All of this. And I said, well, I mean, yeah, I get to go into a cool world of comedy. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And work with just a kind of mini action movie. Oh, I should have showed you guys. Maybe I'll send you a link to that movie. But
I'd love to see it.
I'd love to see it. Yeah, because
it's kind of like a silly action thing. It starts off and you're in this action movie. So I got to do Tony Scott, Bad Boys stuff, Michael Bay, kind of exaggerating to it, right?
Yeah.
But it's an exaggeration and it cuts out on a gunshot to the camera, very Pulp Fiction kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it cuts out into Jared and Norman. Norman Towns is a great, huge actor who's been on some major TV shows. So he was in it too. And it was him and Jared's project that they wrote. And so and you go into the movie and they're pitching their brother, Calais Campbell, and he's got a different name, but he plays a pro football player, and they're pitching him to give him investing on a movie. Cool. So he's like helicopters and you're in it and all this this different stuff. And Calais is amazing in his performance.
So it's like a film within a film, basically.
Exactly. But I got to mess with comedy. You know what I mean? That was my first time that I really got to dabble into comedy and then action. And I was like, yeah, like this is great. So it was like this perfect timing because he went and saw 1/10 after we had a good meeting, and he was like, yeah, dude, you're going to do a good job with the movie. Let's go do it. And then we got to sit down and have a couple meetings with Calais, which he's one of the biggest, nicest, sweetest, awesome people in the world. I actually just talked to him last week. He was at the Super Bowl, and he met Tiger Woods and was telling me that he was pretty cool. He said, as cool as they make
I'm
him.
geeking out right now.
Well, you know, bringing
Yeah.
up Tiger Woods, the funny thing was I kind of had a deja vu because I just saw the Tiger Woods documentary on HBO Max, and
it's so good.
It's so good. And
I loved it.
I like when I was watching 1/10 of a second, it had a very similar vibe to it too, because just how it portrays the main character, your main character, and you feel for the main character. And even though he has his demons and he's, you know, like it's almost like a rags to riches type of story as well. And as well as just being in the professional sports arena, you know, it has, you know, here's someone who's amazing at his craft and just has had a amazing life too, full of doing everything pretty much, which it kind of similar to Tiger Woods's life as well. Just not so much with the, you know, the father figure, you know, being a huge teacher for him, but I would say more so just similar lifestyle, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm with you. And I want to go to bat for Tiger Woods because he's the reason I picked up a golf club when I was 15 or 16 years old.
He was my hero growing up too.
The reason
you know?
I got into the game. Yeah, which changed the trajectory of my life. Went into college golf and taught golf lessons, and I became PGA management. And now I can teach still, and I'm a pretty decent player. Like literally, if I met Woods, I would give him the 1-minute version and say thanks. And I really hope my TV show is big, and I get big enough in the next 5 years to compete with Marty Scorsese to do the biopic because I want that shit. I want Woods' biopic. I want it.
He's such a fascinating character too, because I mean, he pushed golf in the more modern direction for just not only breaking racial barriers, but also just how he played the game and how he approached the game. I think that also kind of comes off also in 1/10 of a second with Johnny pushing the game for, like, he was 35 still doing motocross and he winning Daytona. You know, it's interesting how a lot of professional sports athletes have similar arcs in their history, and kind of have a similar path to get to that level of sportsmanship and also of life itself.
No, there's the other avenue, which what you're talking about, which is the lifestyle. I mean, and I will tell you this, and God knows is my witness, which is great. After that happened to Tiger, dude, I was at his back. I was in my 20s. I was just starting to like date women and really get in, you know what I mean? Like actually go on more dates and meet more girls. And then like that happens to Tiger, and everybody, especially like where I'm from in the Midwest and the culture I was around, of being like, oh my God, Tiger, how do you do this? Right? Everybody's let down. Everybody's bummed, you know, about that he's not this perfect dude. And I literally went to bat with him, and I was like, you and I both know we have no idea what that would be like to be that desirable to all women.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Hey, grandpa. Hey, judgmental idiot. Hey, you know what I mean? Like whoever it is, like you have no clue. Like don't try to comprehend.
It's so hard to grasp. You can't grasp it.
I've only seen it with Johnny. And what I realized was it was the first time in my life, guys, that you're around somebody that can go, hey, I'm going to go later tonight to another state, another country. Do you want to go?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can't afford to do that. He's like, no, let's go.
Let's go. Come
and
on.
You're like,
it's such a hard thing to wrap your head around as like,
and you're
somebody.
Like, well, I can't miss out on work. And they're like, we'll give you $300. What do you need?
Yeah, it's like
let's just go.
Us everyday people, just, you know, like we have jobs and stuff, and we don't have the luxury of just having not a care in the world almost, and just being able to throw caution to the wind and just hop on a jet and just, yeah, as you said, fly to anywhere in the world and be with anyone. It has that grandiose vibe to it, and also just the admiration of what celebrity means in this country. I think that pops up also in the documentary as well. Well, in both documentaries, which was kind of like how I saw the similarities and stuff, because I was like, oh, it's great. So, but like, again, it's like, oh, it seems to be like a common theme that keeps popping up within the American culture and how we view celebrity.
Like I said, I don't,
Yeah.
guys, I don't, you know what I mean? I could tell you about silly situations where I was the dorkiest filmmaker dude, right? At a motorcycle party.
Yeah.
Right. But if the motorcyclists were busy, or there was a weird geeky chick, right? Or some model actress, I was the coolest guy to be with the motorcycle dudes. Like it was a bizarre, you know what I mean? Because I'm around these, like,
it's that status.
It's a different world.
You're instantly higher.
You're in a niche, you know what I mean? That we don't, and it was great because you'd sometimes see Keanu Reeves would be at an event. He loves bikes. Brad Pitt would show up at an event. Right. He loves bikes. Like there's certain people that love their motorcycles, right? Like, and these people go to these things. Yeah.
It's that thrill of speed, I think, that also they're attracted to. It's like a daredevil mentality, but
the
also
rush.
The adrenaline rush that they get it's like a high for them. They're seeking that high. And speaking about high, kind of brings us to Come Die With Me, your short film that you did in 2018. How it was very interesting. I thought how you interweaved the common Western hero archetype into your character, and how it's basically a heroin addict trying to find salvation and try to find his way out of being a drug dealer. And I found that it was interesting that you cast a Western cowboy, and having those morals of what that character represents be kind of the driving force that inevitably allows the character to then get out of the life that he's stuck in. So how did that story kind of come about, and also how did the film come about as well?
It started with a book that was passed down from a dad to a man who I had worked with on Skin in the Game, who was the writer producer on Skin in the Game. And so he came back with me and was like, hey, my buddy wants to do this kind of story. Right. And I love the idea of the book, and then they wanted to kind of do some kind of, interpretation about something that was more of a personal story, to the client, to the EP, about how he was in a hotel room and read this book, and he thinks it's this insanely wonderful, amazing book, and the story behind it and some different themes that way. So I remember they drove out from Arizona and we went to Burbank, and we went to this little pub. Gosh, it's probably out of business, but it was a cool little place. I forgot even the name of it, but hanging out and going and hearing about it and helping them understand all the context of the story, and helping them build a log line and the approach of the film, and kind of taking all these ideas, you know what I mean, of and then also what the book's about, to try to. So I was, definitely super creative producer mode, helping with trying to harness a story.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it has a very...
And interweave the book into the story,
Yeah, exactly. And also, that's a very more experimental version. I'll tell you this. I've got a movie that is my director's cut that I believe is a stronger film. And it is it's a good amount shorter. And it has some different music cues and just different things that I think are more impactful, at least with the actual character in the story. But the producer cut, you would say, it has its own kind of interesting vibe. But most of all, what I wanted to tell was a story at the end of a man's rope that ultimately drove him to these. And we're dropping in just a weekend. You know, this is 3 days of before the turning point of when a man is, you know, going to change his life right before he gets caught.
It's literally the catalyst that's setting him off on the next part of his journey.
So that was the way I could contain it, you know, for them, you know what I mean? To go, okay, look, he's got to drop back in, you know what I mean? We've got to put it in a certain amount of time, you know, it's a short film. It's got to be, like I said, my version's shorter, but the white tee and stuff, it was just like, okay. And James Dean and Giant, you know, like I'm a James Dean guy. My mother's, first cousin was Bill Bass, one of his best friends at UCLA,
oh, really?
And wrote a book about him and produced a movie about him. So James is super like 2 degrees, you know, and actually my second cousin, my mom's first cousin, Bill Bass, actually spent 30 years through CBS as a writer producer. He's the only blood I got in this industry or any tie to it. He was a writer producer, successful guy. Like I said, he did movies and books about James. That was his big, you know, thing, because they were so close for the last 3-4 years.
That's
kind
amazing.
Of flipping to the opposite of, you know, what you did in Come Die With Me, of the long takes. I wanted to talk about Skin in the Game, where it's mostly montage-esque type, very quick, almost like a music. Elliot and I were talking about this before we started, but it's almost like it's a rap song based on how the movement and the beats are going throughout. And for me, it connected with me. I always try to tie things to the humanity side. I'm like the humanity person on the podcast. I don't know how that happened.
He's human,
but yeah, right. Imagine that. But for me, with all the stuff that went on with Wall Street and Wall Street Bets and how Reddit kind of basically took over, you know, the hedge funds and everything and started raising all those stocks, this movie really spoke to me because this, you know, was made back in 2016.
About 2008, right?
Yeah. So here we are in 2021, and one of the lines that really made me think was Guy's line, "We are their revenue stream." And we kind of basically have flipped that on its head these past couple of weeks with the power of the internet. And the Redditors became the people that are the revenue stream and took it from Wall Street. And I found that really interesting because this film, although it was, you know, all those years ago, it's now relevant today just as much as it was then. And we can use that as like basically an example of, oh, wait, like this, it's basically repeating itself, but it's the other way around now. The regular people who, you know, the female was basically more like a regular person in that she wasn't the high up. She is the Redditors, and that's where we're at today. And they're the ones controlling what's going on. So it's kind of like a flip almost, but I found that super interesting. The moment I started watching it, I was like, this directly correlates with what's going on right now in the world. Well, and I think that's so cool.
Much like history, the history repeats itself
in the cycles.
Which I found, as Trevor said, like, you know, it's like a music, poem, rap, because Skin in the Game is, you know, repeated, and it's almost like the chorus in a way, and it also has like a very Boiler Room type of feel to it, which was, I was like,
I'll take that,
because I was like going like, oh, because or even Wall Street with Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, you know, so it has, you know, like the Wall Street issue, I think, as Trevor said, repeats itself in history because it's always there. It's that entity that is just like always in charge, and it always doesn't seem to change.
I mean, as the character says in there, the markets are cyclical. Once again, you know, trying to like tap into, like you said, the Wall Street, but entrepreneur feel. And, you know, I knew people that got hit by 2008, and that was a super personal, gigantic story from Mark that I had to ultimately go, okay, like this is how I take, you know what I mean, this monologue basically, that involves everything with the dynamics of this story, and make this exciting and interesting and still informative, you know what I mean? Because it was, you know, and there's obviously a budget at hand, you know what I mean, with, you know, the client's thing. But I before we left Come Die With Me, you guys were so warm on my favorite part of that movie. And I wanted to ask you, what do you guys think that my homage was with the Cowboy Texan? Like it was so exciting that where I got that homage from.
At one point, I thought it was you playing
at
one point, I thought it was you playing the cowboy Texan, and I was like, because I'm going like, it looks like Kurt. It looks like I'm like, oh no, it's not him. It's not him. It's a different guy. But
now you got me thinking.
well,
over here.
the thing is with Come Die With Me,
in that character, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That character and that cowboy and just the way I shot it and
well, definitely, I see the James
God?
Cowboy. Oh, kind of Dallas Buyers Club, or I would say even like a Paul Newman, even like he had a very it was like a Paul Newman James Dean vibe going on.
Okay, yeah,
totally. But okay, no, the actual thing that I was so excited about, the geek in me, is that it was the first time I actually got to use a Tarantino moment of Elvis from True Romance with Christian Slater.
Okay, right.
So I literally, I was like, when I went to the pitch with these guys, I said, I'm gonna take the character of Tex Foster and I'm gonna make him the Elvis while giving him advice. And I get to literally now Tony Scott and Tarantino this
blended
into existence. Into this. So that was one of the most exciting reasons about the project that I really enjoyed. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do my own little version here. Because I loved this when I was young and I saw True Romance, and I still love that film, and I rewatched it recently, and it's pretty fantastic. So, but back to that with Come Die With Me. That was a geeky kind of
your film geek came out.
I got to you know what I mean, where I'm like, when I'm talking to the DP and I'm like getting it, going, okay, I want to do this frame, and can we get me this lens, and it was one of the more delightful parts.
Well, that's a great thing about with film as an artistic form. You can put a lot of your own artistic influences into it, plus what jazzes you in life. And I think that really comes through in a lot of your films that you've worked on, because you've had a very interesting life, man. And and continuing to have an interesting life. So, and it's like, and it's just amazing that there's so much of it that you've lived already, like, and gone and seen so much of the world, and it's all of its intricacies, which is really comes through in your films. I feel.
Oh, yeah, that's huge, man. I really appreciate that. I think the biggest key is the empathy. You know what I mean? That I try to like see and going, okay, like even when I first started acting into my journey, and learning about that, and is going, you can't. And James Dean, who would always say this, you can't actually, you really have to put yourself in other people's shoes and try to really understand if you want to be, especially, you guys know, as a great actor or a great writer, right? You've got to realize that they they should be respected on some, if they don't ultimately, aren't absolutely terrible people. And even if they are, how did they get there? Right. And why did they do this? And why do they feel justified? And you know what I mean? There's a why and there's a reason for why people are. And, and that's why, it continues to be, even to this day, is meeting new people that like to talk, because I am a big fan of listening. So like, if they can actually are decent at talking and telling a story, it could be an airport bar. It could be, let a Johnny Rock Page. It could be, the narcissists are the best, just
they're the multi-layered characters,
and you don't have to do anything to them. They're already fleshed out.
It's already,
You're just there.
Yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah.
Well, speaking about working with other directors and such, when you produced Un Regalo Esencial, I think I'm saying that right, in 2018, how did that project kind of come about? And like, because you kind of took a step back from the directing chair and produced Jose Mario Salas. Yeah. And it was kind of like your foray into romantic comedy.
That was an interesting kind of way. I was ultimately, I met this guy I met Jose, and I had been around NIFA at the time, and he was finishing at NIFA. And then I spoke to him a bit because he had a Costa Rican soccer jersey on, and he was like, "Oh, I did this feature film down in Central America. Now I'm like getting a master's degree up here."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Wild." I said, I was falling in love and with my wife, who's from Costa Rica, and so we had that tie to talk about. And then it was strange because we talked a bit about what and I showed him. I think I showed him like Skin in the Game, and he liked it. And then I talked to him about 1/10 of a Second, and he told me about his first feature film, and I watched it, and then we talked again, and then we realized that his sister was finishing up med school with my wife down at the same med school. And so we had these interesting ties. And then I saw his work, and he had a lot of potential, and he was a young guy and very more of an auteur kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I came to find out through that own journey of being a producer, but ultimately saw, and I sat with him. I remember the first time he told me about this movie, and he just knew the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he pitched it and told me the 20-minute version of everything that happens and who it happens to. And he saw the movie. And so I was a producer by proxy with almost everything I've been directing. Yeah. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is really great. And he was like, I want to put this together. And then we just started the conversations where I was like, if you really put this together the way it is in your head, I think it can be a really awesome movie, and I can come on and help from everything with the budget to working with the writer and developing the best script possible, and kind of a few years older than him, really challenging and pushing him to make the most out of the opportunity. Yeah. And then his casting, because he casted like big time kind of celebrity people down in Central America, Costa Rica area.
Gotcha.
So he knew that he would be able to go to theaters and get people to, go and buy tickets. So right. He had this really great plan and a really good story.
Yeah.
Like I said, work with me. I said, and I can get it basically out in the world, through my contacts of distribution, and then we went on the journey together, and yeah.
The rest is history. Yeah.
We made a movie.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I thought was very interesting too, it also blends, it's not your typical like romantic comedy. It has elements of sci-fi in it because it has the dealing with time and the perception of time. And also how you guys shot that was like in the future when it's 2024, you have that very cold, contrasted blue tones that kind of set up the future. And it kind of also emotes what one of the main characters, the son, or the grandkid, I should say, is feeling at that time, because he's going through troubles with his girlfriend at school. And then when the grandpa tells his love story, it changes. The color becomes more vibrant and more warm. And also because it's in the 80s, you really captured the look of it too, which I thought was great. And it becomes like this sort of quasi sci-fi period piece too, as well. So I thought that was really interesting.
He's definitely an auteur. He had a very particular, kind of idea we needed to. But you picked up on a lot of the stuff that was supposed to be, picked up. Sorry. Continue.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, and then kind of changing gears from that, you just also did the Jamie Kennedy special and switching over to stand-up comedy. So how did that kind of come about as well?
Oh man, that's kind of a fun story. Yeah. So basically, I was living in the heart of Hollywood. I had just, I was in Chicago for a while and falling in love with my wife, and she had to finish med school because she was there for kind of an internship thing. And I went back to Los Angeles in California, and only it was right in the heart of like Fountain and Poinciana around Sunset, like right in the gut of all the homeless but the beautiful people, and which is always fun. I lived a few blocks away from some good friends that I knew from Arizona that were like comedians and different people. So I became friends with, and he ran literally a really cool weekly comedy show on the second floor on Hollywood Boulevard of Hooters, surprisingly enough. And it started with 20 people, I remember. And then within 6 months, he was packing it every Wednesday because they had a happy hour and they were getting better and bigger people. And he was and he had connections at the Comedy Store and worked over there, and he was just building. So I would go over, on Wednesday nights and go see some comedy and see my buddy do some comedy and meet some comics and get up there. And I even thought about doing it because I'm an actor, and the process of everything. And then I met this one guy who was working, who's now one of my good friends. He's executive producer of it, helped me put it together. Mike B. Lawson. He's one of the production companies on there, and he's one of my closest friends today. But we had just kind of talked about, he had moved out here less than a year before and worked in like marketing distribution. And was on that side of things over at Sawyer Studios. And so he kind of had that angle, and it was way more business, and was also a stand-up comedian and was trying to do this. So anyways, we met, and out of nowhere, Jamie Kennedy comes to the show. Like, he gets Jamie Kennedy to come. So Jamie Kennedy comes to this small, cool weekly show in Hollywood and does some time. And then afterwards, I spoke with him a bit, but Mike spoke a lot with him. Mm-hmm. And I guess was like, hey, man, we should work together or whatnot, because lo and behold, my good buddy Mike B. Lawson, like, I love Jamie Kennedy, dude. He's super funny. Yeah. Scream, Malibu's Most Wanted, right?
Tremors,
like all this
6.
From Boiler Room. Dude, but the classics, dude. And he was do Boiler Room, you mentioned. So that was cool, and even Romeo and Juliet, working with Baz Luhrmann. Mm-hmm. But anyways, Mike like really grew up enjoying and being a huge fan of Jamie Kennedy. So he had this opportunity where he spoke with him, and then told him that he wanted to do something. And then with their talks, then Mike told me another Wednesday night, like, we should talk and get coffee. And I heard you make
let's go
serious
schmooze,
projects, and let's go. So we sat down and talked, and we got along well. And I told him about what I thought I could do for the project, and how I even believed I could help raise money with a guy like Jamie Kennedy. And we went, and then we started seeing Jamie's sets, and I was like, this guy's really funny. I didn't really know him as a comedian that well. I'd only known him from the movies, then I thought his stuff was genuinely funny. And so I was like, oh, this would be great. Like, I mean, Jamie Kennedy, the past kind of sort of celebrity mixed up dude, is irrelevant. This guy's got a platform and a brand, and he's funny. And this is a comedy special. And he's not nobody. So let's go,
he's got
let's go try to make this.
He's got that very dry sense of humor too. Very witty, dry, just like, I've lived it all type of deal, which I think that's also interesting that you two kind of also met, because you guys have lived so much of life and stuff. And it's like, fellow artists will bump into each other that way. And I find that very interesting, because it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's cool. So
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. Cause I remember, just showing him a little bit of the work, and he was like, whoa, you like hung out with for a race motorcycle racer documentary, like, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. And,
that's me.
So those are little things that are, are like, just like kind of niche and interesting. But yeah, no, Jamie, I gotta give a shout out to Jamie Kennedy, man. That guy works really hard on his comedy, and he actually like really puts in the time and takes it serious, and is always, he's always got this quote, you know what I mean? Don't say tomorrow, let's do it today. We're going to die. And it was always like, okay, Jamie, that was one of his quotes, we're going to die, man. Let's get to it, but he would
timing's everything.
3-4 sets. Yeah. He would put on 3-4 sets, 4 or 5 days a week. And the guy still does when he can now that they're opening up. So he was just a hardworking dude. And, you know, we would sometimes get great stories of old 90s Hollywood days and out of him, which was great. And I love those moments. And then would talk to him about, you know, whatever, Boiler Room and Scream and different stories when he would go into stuff, which was all, you know, fun for, you know, a guy in his 30s, you know.
Well, what's so interesting to me is Johnny and Jamie and you are all, you're all very much alike. You're all very competitive. You go after something you want. And I feel like that's why you've met these people in your life and worked with these people, because you can stand on their level type of thing. You're on their playing field. You have that drive and that competitiveness to be able to create these things.
Thanks, man. That's the nicest thing anybody said to me in a while, man.
No problem. It's true though. It really is.
I really appreciate it, because, you know, I do have that, you know, that drive of, you know, like, my wife's either going to be a millionaire or she's going to leave me, kind of thing, you know, like I gotta get to work, you know what I mean? Because and things are going well right now. You know what I mean? The past few years have been successful, and I'm working with great people, and, you know, like I've got great stuff going. But like, if I would have told people how I got here, you know, like young filmmakers, I don't know how many of them would have signed up for the journey, or if I would have signed up.
Right. Speaking of that, speaking of work, you have a huge list of things you've already done. What do you have on the plate that you can kind of divulge about without giving too much away? Anything big, special?
Yeah.
Any projects?
I developed a TV show that is going to be either one, or I ultimately see them as possible multiple properties that are going to be television narratives that are based on life rights and IP and true crime out in South Africa. So they're pretty exciting, kind of one is a female lead detective, and the other is an older man, you know, who was around for a very dangerous time in the culture. But it's been a very, speaking of all my different sides of me, this has been the darkest and the strangest, and I'm very excited, and I have interest from lit managers and producers, and I've already pitched it at a few places. We've got some more meetings in the next couple of weeks, so I know I've got something exciting. It's more of just the patience and finding the right people. So, I mean, a friend of mine said that he would like get it over to his screenplay buddy. And he was like, "Oh, do you know who this guy is?" And it's like an older dude in his like 50s. And I'm like, yeah, I know who it is. You know what I mean? And he was like, "Oh yeah." And it's nobody that is huge, but he like wrote Lawless in 2012 with Tom Hardy, and he wrote a movie with Guy Pearce in 200004. And I'm like, like
that's somebody.
And he's an amazing,
he's done a few
musician,
things.
And so the fact of that it's even like a maybe, that it's an exciting project that my high profile friends are taking an interest in and are very excited about. It's more of just now actually making sure I align everything properly. You know what I mean? With the next people that kind of come onto the project.
Yeah. And that's kind of one thing that I've taken that you've told me and we've talked about. It only takes that one thing, that one moment, one opportunity, much like a lot of your films, you know, that's kind of with Johnny, especially, you know, he basically says, dream big, anything is possible. And I feel like you take that to heart and carry it with you every single day, because we've talked about that one moment can change everything. And it's going to be tough, but putting in the work is going to pay off in some way, whether that's for your gain or other people's gain or everyone's gain. It's just a matter of what ultimately happens, type of thing.
Well, it's like being in the right place, the right time, you know, too. Yeah, you know, like, and I think you've had a lot of luck in that respect too, and also drive. The drive is very apparent with just from talking to you and who you are and the work you've worked and the people you've worked with. It's very self-evident. So I would say, like, you know, that drive though, like, really does push you. It really can push people into the right direction of where their career path should go or their life path should go. So I you're a prime example, Kurt. So it's great.
No, I like I said, that really is awesome, man. Because as you know, in all of our battles, I mean, I encourage Trevor, even though Trevor's like a super young guy, so he's fine. But like,
He's a youngin'.
you know what I mean? Like, no matter, yeah, man. But like, so he's got time on his side. But like, the thing is that
Us oldies are gonna be like, I'm 31, so like
Oh.
we're all just, our faces are gonna start caving in and stuff. That gray hair's coming in,
dude. Yeah,
but it's good.
That's what I'm saying, dude. And I just think that I think that it's I even tell Trevor, I'm like, dude, yeah, it's consistency, and we talk about consistency and the little victories, and that it continues and it builds, and the same thing in the conversations that we had, and that's really how it like is wild to look back, right, amongst all those projects, even in the last like 5-6 years, to be like, oh wow, that was the throttle, but like what I had to do beforehand of like asking my sister for $5,000 for a short, you know what I mean? Like, and the audacity the young filmmaker had to like go to like strangers and be like, well, I haven't really done much, but you should invest in my movie. And I did.
Believe in me.
And, and I'm going to be able to do this. And I know some incredible cameramen and different people that are going to assist me, and you watch, and I'm going to do it. And just little victories, whether it was a short film or a pet commercial or, the little things that I've shot, like car commercial, like, and it just like, and just going, okay, yeah, I'm going to continue to do this and sharpen the skills. And now I never ever really thought I would actually try to create a television show, and what a monumental task that's been. And way different than a movie. It's like 4 or 5. So it's definitely thought it would be a little bit easier, but I know that it's just like working out. If it hurts, your muscles are growing. And
you're fine tuning
that.
Yeah, you're fine tuning the yen to first and foremost, you're a storyteller. You have stories to tell. You have things to say, and
I can't do it alone.
Yeah, you can't do it alone.
I need everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to tell stories. So,
yeah.
And I'm not, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as an auteur maybe down the road, but I love collaborating, man. I love collaborating. So it's hard for me not to, you know what I mean, want to hire a Roger Deakins type to go, just teach me.
Yeah.
Like help
yes,
me,
master.
I'm not gonna be arrogant. Yeah.
I will learn.
I will be the Padawan, and you'll be the master. It'll be good.
Yeah, like Frank Darabont says when they did with Shawshank, where he was like, there were so many times I'd be like, so what do you think, Roger? Like, you know what I mean? With Shawshank Redemption, well, duh, Frank, you were really, work smarter, not harder. You're with Roger Deakins. You've done one TV movie. Let him lead.
Exactly.
And that's the smart filmmaker. That's not an auteur. That's that is a collaborator. So, and I love the auteurs. I mean, they're incredible. And maybe I will get into the mode of writing and, and directing and producing it later on. But for whatever reasons, obviously the combination of building the long-term 50-year career I hope to have, and then putting food on my family's plate, were the jobs that have at least come to this point. So I have to be like thankful, because they ultimately have, so I appreciate you guys kind of checking out whatever you did, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, your work was fantastic. Yeah. So much fun to watch. I've known you for a while, but I've never seen your work yet. It was a joy to watch it. It was cool to see.
Likewise.
Really
thanks,
cool. Man.
Yeah, seriously, man.
Thanks,
and thank you again, Kurt, for doing this with us. This has been a real pleasure.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.